All right, bed stream. So I had to start a little bit later because I was dealing with positions. Wow. Nice little drop there. I got out of my call spreads so fast. I was like, holy shit, I'm getting out of this. I could have been out with a profit if I had gotten out earlier in the day, which I thought about doing, and I tried to kind of, but then gave up because I set a price and the thing didn't hit the price. I was like, fine, whatever, I'm just going to hold it. Use that sign, hold it. Well, this is what happens when we don't listen to that stuff. We are bouncing. So I still have plays to both directions going on. The shorts are up a bit, but they were long shot shorts, so they're not up very much. They weren't the kind of shorts I wanted to waste a bunch of money on. My expectation was at some point we would get a little bit of a pop. I got in late, unfortunately, because the market's been pumping for the past couple of days. I mean, if I back this chart up a little bit, you can see that, I mean, the past week or two, it's just been up, 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 up. And that has been hard to get in on because I keep seeing this like, all right, here we go. This is the strength, but I need that pullback in order to get in at a safe level. Well, I didn't get the pullback. It just kept going and going. It kept squeezing. Like you can see right here in this section with this unnatural amount of green, that's a squeeze. I mean, bull runs can do stuff like that, but when you see sideways trading, there's consolidation, there's uncertainty, and then this huge pop, that's like 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a squeeze. I'd almost say 10 times out of 10, it's going to be a squeeze, but I always want to leave the possibility open that I could be wrong about anything. So you see these right here. This is showing you that people are way more confident about this. Now, this is buy the rumor, sell the news. So we're finally getting that drop. But if you look at this thing, we've bounced a bit. I mean, we're at a level that we were at, yesterday? Yeah, at pre-market trading yesterday, after-market trading the day before, post-squeeze. That's kind of where we are. We're bouncing up into this post-squeeze area. And you can see there was more extreme volatility right here. And a lot of this had to do with news and what was coming up. But the fact that you're seeing these huge movements shows that all these shorts right here that were caught and we're trying to get out, we're still readjusting over here. And now there's a bunch of people jumping in. So this is my thought on this whole event. So this is the way it's played out. I usually like to wait, but I've been missing out when I wait, so I tried to get in early, and what do you know? It's a day to wait. So it's like I'm always doing the opposite. I feel it. Every trader feels the same thing. Whatever's going on, you know what to do, but you end up doing the absolute wrong thing. And you thought, wait, this was what I was supposed to do, but that's what happens. So if you don't want to do that, you have to wait for those opportunities that are rare, extremely rare opportunities. Like Wendy's last year had this huge drop. It's traded from like 20 to 24 for years solidly. And every time it hits one level, it bounces and goes somewhere around the other level. When it dropped out of that range after years of sitting in that range, and it was just red, 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 when the entire market was doing the same thing, and there was a not so great earnings announcement, maybe a pre-announcement. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was so off that I mentioned, I was like, hey, this is a trade. Those are the trades you wait for. When Snapchat dropped so low and the market pulled everything down and the sector pulled them down, but they had a breakout in India because India spread the platform way more than they were expecting. They were looking for an alternative to TikTok because India wasn't happy with TikTok either. So you got to think of like, everything that comes out of some country is going to have the country's influence, and now we're like integrating each other so much that there are people that are still far away from that and will push back against it. So you see these like differences in the way countries think about things, the way they do things. And right now, it's not just the United States that's trading this event. It's the entire world, because if the dollar's the reserve currency, regardless of what people are trying to do right now, if you're in the business for business's sake, you're paying attention to this. You're paying attention to the dollar. You're doing what the dollar tells you should do because that's what you're invested in, basically. You're invested in a currency. Now, I'm all for diversity of currencies. I think having alternate currencies is actually a good idea. I like having a cash position, not just stocks and options and crypto and futures and whatever else you want to do. I'm also talking about whatever the hell I was talking about before I forgot. Lost my train of thought. That's what happens all the time. I hate that, man. I'm on a good point. I'm trying to finish it, and I just blow it because I forget about that. But hey, you know what? That's where we are right now. So my whole thing was I'm a little rattled because I had some contracts to the upside thinking that there would be a pop before we would come back down. But I knew there was a possibility of this drop. So my thought was I'm weighted both ways with cheap plays, so extreme movements will profit. But if I need to get out of the way quickly, I could do that. So I set up spreads. I hate spreads. Long spreads, they kill your gains. And it protects you a little bit when you drop, but you still lose out. So it's only a piece of what you're losing. But still, I had those plays on because I was that uncertain about the upside movement. I thought it's very likely that we could go down. And that's what we did on the announcement. But we haven't gotten to Jerome Powell yet. Right now, the news is circulating. So we've had the rate announcement. I've looked at the news multiple times, but I've been so flustered, I haven't actually seen if there's an update yet. So I'm going to open the news, which it's probably not going to show up because I'm doing the whole setup differently now. And I'm just going to run through it real quick. So I did see that they thought 2 more 25 basis point rate hikes could happen for a total of 100 by the end of 2024. So 2 basis points by the end of year. Okay. So we're still thinking, some people were thinking pause or skip right now. But the question is, did they raise it right now? That's what I'm trying to figure out. There's usually a thing that just says Fed raises rates. So if they're skipping or pausing, I mean, that's hugely bullish. Recent indicators suggest economic activity continue to expand at a modest pace, job gains, blah, blah, blah. That's the actual text. I need to see, we're doing Fed official sees 3.2 inflation at the end of the year, which would be great if it got down to 3.2. 2.5 at the end of 2024, which that's more in line. If it's close to 2, like it doesn't have to be exactly 2, but if it's like even 3, it's a little higher than projected, it's still within the margin of error for their things because they widen it by like a few 100 points. So, I mean, if you're in that range, that counts as what they're looking for. You know, it was below the range. See, before all this stuff happened, we were below trend for the longest time. And the Fed was like, well, we need more inflation because we need to pay for things. That's how we pay for things. So there's a thing. We finally had a thing. It was going down, down, down for years. And then suddenly we had a thing that caused a scarcity to emerge in the system. So we piled in on that, and it caused things to stop elsewhere, which changed the way, it's hard to explain. It changed the way we ran our own economy. It changed the way we thought about business and how we run things. So we didn't just change things at a business level. We changed things at a governmental level. We did all this stuff. And that included increasing the money supply by a lot, which increases inflation, which allows the Fed, through its many means, to pay for everything. So like the Fed is happy. I'm not saying the Fed is causing inflation. Everyone's like, all right, they're causing it. That's why it's happening. It's like, okay, maybe, I don't know. I doubt that it's what you think. I don't think it's a bunch of people behind the scenes like trying to make everything go, but like, is there influence? Oh, absolutely. I think the influence is not only there, but it's more powerful than people even want to give it credit for. So anyway, we've got inflation. They think it's coming down. If it comes down within that target, then the Fed looks good. That's all they need. I mean, there's the news and there's the hype. They're basically just trying to keep things going. They're thinking long term, and every meeting, things have been more and more positive. So they get to rely on that set of data too. It's not just like what's coming out right now. It's the fact that they can take the data that they've been analyzing for a long time and pit it against what's going on and be like, wow, this is actually coming. It's been coming down, and it's coming down faster. That's what happens with strong momentum pulls. Like, it takes a while to get it to go, but once it does, it has the ability to pull so much with it. It has so much inertia that reversing it is so difficult. I think that's what happens with these kind of changes. So it takes a lot of energy to move the change, but once the change gets going, it's going on its own. You don't have to add any energy, but you will, which will make it go faster. And that's how everything runs. So that's what we're counting on. We're waiting for the Fed to get going. I'm just kind of blabbing in the meantime. We've got a nice little drop. I was weighted a little bit to the upside. I got out of those quickly, so that's what I was trying to say. I was telling you about my plays. So I had some call spreads to the upside on the SPY. I had some other plays to hedge that to the downside. Once things dropped heavily, the volatility in these contracts popped. And for a minute, they were actually worth more than I bought them. See, that's the interesting thing about options. The price fluctuations are so crazy since they're based on the stock, but they are their own economy. So they can quickly drop and pop and create an illusion that there's a price in one area, but you can catch these like little breaks in the way the software works where it's like, I got to get it at this price no matter what. And you can catch those. So I had only 2 spreads because that's how not confident I was about a pop. It's like, man, I'm going to be ready for a pop because these things will be crazy, but I don't feel a pop. And what do you know? This is where we're at. We had this drop. I got out quickly. We're still down. I'm looking through the news to find out what actually happened. I haven't seen a thing that says what the actual rate hike is. So did they pause? If anybody knows, put it in chat because I legitimately don't know what they did with the rates. That's usually the absolute first thing that comes out on the news. It's like Fed raises by 25 points. Fed halts, whatever. There's nothing here. It's just read the whole text, which I don't have the ability to do right now because I'm trying to wait for the thing to trade. And that's my thing. Like, so, all right, we have a drop. We're looking for a trade. When do we actually trade? Well, right now is when we trade. I'm always like, nah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But right now, this is the time. So we have this nice drop and it's holding. It's holding at the lows. It was up a little bit higher. It's a level change. People are reacting. This is our new zone that we're trying to build. So from now, well, I guess from the bottom of this candle until the Fed is the zone that they're holding for when the Fed starts. And once there's a break of that level, that's when the stuff can rush in. So if the news is positive, right? So here's the thing. If Jerome Powell comes out and he's dovish, then we're going to bounce. But if he comes out and he's hawkish or he's just kind of neutral, we could continue to drop because this shows a sentiment is to the downside at this point, but not super down because we're at a level that we were at yesterday and the day before, kind of in between those 2 days, really. So price has settled down from the craziness and it's trying to find a spot to wait for Powell. So we've got 10 minutes. This would be the time to think about the trades you're going to make. I've got some call spreads on, but I don't like where they are. So the fact, I mean, not on, I've got them on my screen. I'm looking at the call spreads that I had. They are down like 100 from where each call spread would have been down $100. So got out of those things. I'm still looking at them, but I don't want to. So I'm going to go into my options window. See, I got to hook up this whole setup so you can see what I'm doing. But I'm basically using my broker. I'm going into the options. I'm looking at calls if we're going to get a bounce. I'm still looking at the chart, which we're forming this range, so I don't want to get anything yet. But it looks like we're pumping a little bit. Let me go over to this chart. We've kind of hit this bottom, and we've been consolidating in this range right here, up to about halfway through the candle. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was where we actually got to because we had this big bounce right here. So if I change the time frame to like 10 minutes, that'll give us a little bit more indication of what's going on. So see, a little bit, it's coming down, it's holding, but we've been dropping all day. We had this peak early in the morning when people were trying to get in before the event, when idiots like me were finally like, gosh, this thing's been going for too long. I need to get something to the upside, as the bear or the bull trap right there. Absolute bull trap. It wasn't like, oh, we're setting this up. It's like, this is just what's going on. It was a bull trap. The pumping from the past few days, the FOMO, was a perfect time for this to actually happen. So now we've got the reaction. They're holding right here. It's not going below that right now. However, we are dropping to the low of the range. So you saw we just kind of bounced up. We were up here at some point, 435, and now we're hanging down at 434. So we're forming a dollar-ish. Let's call it even a $2 range if we go up a little higher on that candle, because that bounce was pretty high for a while. We're forming a tight range in the long term, which you can't really see because I have it on the bottom of my screen. We've just been going up all year, and we're finally to a level of resistance, high volume. So I was talking to somebody, they were all about price. I was like, yes, price is super important, but volume is too, because that shows you where most people have their risks set at. That should be in your psyche as far as your trading and your influence, because if you know those people are going to panic or they're going to jump in, then you can take advantage of that. So you got to pay attention to that part, but most people don't even want to. So the fact that I'm saying, and people that pay attention to volume and they're looking for breakouts and all this other stuff, like, I get it. That's not really going to help you that much, because the movement of the now is not dictated by that previous candle. In trading, it's like you see a perfect thing forming, you get in and it drops. That's how everybody works, because the FOMO gets to a point where people start jumping in, and the people that were already in are like, all right, I got my profits, I'm out. They're setting the ceiling on that thing, and we're hitting it hard a lot of times. So the fact that we've been pumping for the past week, that just like that fueled the bull trap. But my suspicion was right, and I protected myself. I hate spreads when you're going to the long side. Short side, yes, spreads, absolutely. But when you're going to the long side, I hate spreads. It's better to be able to set up a thing without that. Anyway, I got out of that thing quickly because I just did not see that going well. Now I'm looking at some calls because I would like to grab a pop if we get one, even if it's just one for the day. But the thing is, I don't want to be on the short-term calls. I'm not looking for super huge gamma risk. Gamma is the rate of change of delta, and delta is your profit and loss. And the closer you get to the money, the more delta you're going to see. And once you're in the money, even more, the delta goes up from there. So that's why people like options. They exponentially get better until they hit a max. So I'm looking for calls right now. I don't like spreads usually, but I got them to protect myself. Right now, this range is formed. It's all red. I've got this on the 10-minute candle now. And oops, that's the news. Not what I'm trying to get here. I got this on the 10-minute candle right now, and it's just at the bottom of this. Look at this. This is not looking good. So I'm thinking, I don't really want to do anything because it's harder to go to the downside. However, this is a strong downside cue. If Powell comes out and says something negative, I would not be surprised if the actual natural Fed pattern emerged when he came out. And the usual pattern is there's some craziness, it drops, it recovers, and then whatever else happens after the day. It's like a check mark pattern, basically. A drop and then a pop above where it started, or at least equal to where it started. So if you can get in low enough to catch it up to that point, then you can get out safely. But I don't like the way this is behaving for an upside play. We've been consistently below VWAP, which is only important for trading in this short time frame. I'm not saying VWAP is everything, but the way I like to look at VWAP is kind of how people feel about the price. It's attracted to this point, and when huge deviations occur, it shows you that, number one, VWAP's going to have to move because it's going down already. There's a huge drop. We look at if I zoom in on this, you can kind of see, I wasn't paying attention to the volume before, but let me pull this up. So you can see massive volume all of a sudden on that drop. Look at that volume compared to everything else. So that's why we got what we got. Everyone went in the algos, like this huge pump happened in volume, and now we're cooling off a little bit because we're waiting for the Fed. So we've basically formed this range. I'm comfortable with the range that it's in. We've got 4 minutes until Powell, and I'm going to turn that on and stop talking for most of it because I want to hear what he says. But I'm probably going to be trading in the background. And if I make any trades, I'm going to say something about it, but it's mostly just going to be Powell talking. And what we're looking for is how dovish or how hawkish he is. Is he talking about, how is he talking about rate hikes? How is he talking about QE, QT? What's he saying about the housing market? What's he saying about their policy? What's he saying about the debt ceiling that passed? Like, there's so many different things that could trigger moves. Number one, I don't really want to play much of it because of what already happened. Number two, the volatility could be crazy because this is also the same setup you see for these massive pops. Right now, I think this green is probably going to be another bull trap because usually what happens is this drop happens, you think it's coming back, and there's another trap before it either does or doesn't. But right now, we're in the range, so I don't necessarily think this green candle. It depends on what time frame you're looking at because not everybody's using the 10-minute. I'm just doing it because it's giving us a good read of what's going on. The 5-minute probably looks a little crazier. You see we're getting an actual we're getting support and resistance in this range. This is what I was saying. Once this kind of stuff formed and we were right here with this candle, I thought, all right, this is our range until he talks. And 3 minutes left. So he'll be out around that time, and his words, I will not be surprised, will move the market massively. I mean, it's just this is what we've been waiting. Number one, we've been waiting for a new summary of economic projections. So we need to hear what he says about that. That's going to show us what people are planning on voting in the future based on where rates are. So they're estimating number one, where they think it's going to be, and number two, how they're going to vote when certain things happen. That's the other thing you're seeing is like it tells you who votes where and why. So you can get a picture of like, do they really feel confident in this, or are they just saying this because they think this will make the market feel happier? They're trying not to actually go, hey, what's up? I'm Blaze. What's going on? Finally able to make it. Had to get sleep for work last time. No, absolutely, dude. You've got that kid going on. I feel so sorry for you right now because like I went through that for a long time and it was hard. It was I hated life. Absolutely hated life. But right now we've got a Fed meeting. We're waiting for Powell in about 2 minutes. And like I said, I'm just going to let him talk and go from there because what I'm trying to do is catch a little bounce if I can. I don't want to jump out completely on anything. I've got some very small plays to the upside, to the downside, mostly like long shots. So if there's a huge movement either direction, then I'm going to be fine. But those ones, if nothing happens by tomorrow or Friday, I'm getting out of them. I'm not going to worry about that too much. However, this meeting is going to tell us what's going to happen afterwards, because I think there's going to be a lot of pressure released, and we do have some downside pressure, a lot of fears that he needs to alleviate, and I don't know if he's actually going to be able to do that. So curious what he'll do. I've assumed that the rate hikes are over because Canada just raised 25. Yeah, I know it's crazy. There's so many other arguments that actually there are so many other economies that actually affect each other, like when the EU or Canada or Asia or any of these economies raise rates or lower rates. I always look at it like, all right, what's this going to do to the rest of the world? Because they all have an effect, man. They all have an effect. So we've got Powell coming on in a minute, probably less than a minute right here. I got to get this thing going. I'll have the sound up. Like I said, I'm going to let him talk, but I'll pipe in if I actually do something. Right now, I'm not really looking at much. I've got some calls. I've got some puts on the SPY. Don't want to do the QQQ, but right now it's all market more so than hype. So, all right, here we go. He's going to come out any minute. So let me turn this up real quick. There we go. I'm just going to mute my mic as soon as he comes out. He's usually like a couple of seconds or minutes late because he's got to do his thing before he gets out here. He's addressing the world, dude. He's like moving the entire economy of the world. I can't imagine what pressure, like right before, think about it, you got to make a speech in front of everybody that actually matters for everybody's life. You think about that just right before you got to go out and go on TV and do something. Like I caught him like farting on this one thing. Nobody else did. I got clips of it. It's like that just happens sometimes when you're when you're live and you're going crazy. So, or waiting for Powell to do his thing. Here we go. Powell's coming out. I'm going off. Good luck. All right, we're going to go back to listening to that in a second. But I do have some trades on right now. I kept most of my dual-sided plays, but I grabbed some calls when it was dumping way down at the bottom just to see if I can catch a bounce. We're hitting VWAP. We're rejecting a little bit right now. I've got a decent little profit. I think I'm going to dump out of it I might save some. I don't know. It's just I'm up. I got a little bit. I've made back what I lost. So I think it's time to just get out, even though I think it's going to keep going. So I have plays that'll protect to the upside if an extreme move happens, but this is my only play at this point because I was just throwing a little bit in there as like a last minute ditch to grab that bottom point. The question is it going to go through VWAP here, which it's kind of testing and bouncing off of, which is why I'm saying this is important right now. Because if it can get past VWAP and if it can get past VWAP, it's going to be at the area that it was trading right beforehand. And then if it can get past that, it's got some nice upside. So we've basically got bullish sentiment because we hit a bottom. The question is, are we going to reject and go down or sideways? Or are we going to break above it and continue to go? So these guys are still talking in my ear. It's hard to talk while I'm listening to what they're saying because I'm not listening to what they're saying. But I've got some calls on right now. I'm thinking about dumping at least some and then seeing what happens with the rest because this looks like it might pop a little bit. But at the same time, I don't like the sentiment on the day. It's been below VWAP for most of it. It's been struggling. We do have some strength with these green candles. We have a little bit of volume. It's not completely quieted down. We had that first thing, and then as he's been talking, we've had this rise. However, volume's been somewhat level. And if it continues to stay right here and it doesn't shoot up, like I don't see this going too crazy right now. I'm still sitting in it just to see what happens, but at this point, I want to hear the last point of the meeting, and then I'll talk about my thoughts on everything because right now it's been an interesting go. So back to Pal and Ash and Phoenix. Hey, what's going on? Thanks for joining me. Thanks for the resub, man. That's amazing. Appreciate that. We're watching the Fed right now. Got some contracts on, looking up a little bit, but seeing what we're doing here. The calls are sitting pretty right now. I'm thinking about getting out of them, but they've been continuously moving. You know, we're getting some support here at VWAP. I'm thinking about holding it because the candle is sitting. Look at that. It's been there we go. Get that. It's sitting on VWAP right now. Like the two. I believe this is a 2-day. It's been struggling here for quite a while. So I'm thinking this is either good support or a good place to dump out because my contracts are looking nice. Recovered the little amount that I lost. When I got out of those contracts, luckily in time, because even right now those contracts would not be worth what they should be. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. We're finishing up the Fed meeting right now. They're doing questions. They're trying to move the markets with their own little agendas. So we'll see what happens with all that and then the market reaction after it. Right now, it's somewhat bullish. It's looking good, but that doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. We need to break the support of the day, and we need to get past a previous VWAP to have any hope of continuing upwards. So we'll see what's going. Back to Powell and his stuff. I took my play off the table. I still got a few of them on. Looking really good for the day. We'll talk about it later. Let's go! Okay, well, that was interesting. So Powell came out. Rates are unchanged. The market is sitting in the middle. So we've got this nice little consolidation point in the middle where we've pumped above VWAP. We came back down, we tested it, and now that's where we're holding. So are we going to pass VWAP and keep going? We have the strength to do something like that. But my guess was if we had this movement with what he was saying, kind of what we were expecting, as the theme usually is with these meetings, we would have a little pump and at least a test of VWAP. So when it was consolidating down here and looking like it had some strength, I snagged some calls. Was holding them right here. It's sweating hard, dude. These two candles right here were killing me. You have no idea how much I was like, is this the move? Are we done? You know, like we just tested VWAP. It was sitting below VWAP forever before it punched right through it, and then it started getting strength. And that's what you got to see with VWAP. It's like, yeah, I know VWAP doesn't matter in certain things, but it tells you where the sentiment is and where a lot of people are gauging their trades. So it's more of like a focal point. It's not like it's telling you where things are going to go. It's just showing you a path it's going to use to get there. And these people are going to get to these points usually and try to say, I got it at VWAP, or that's where it looks good. So we're so far away from the average price based on the volume traded, because that's what VWAP is in a very simple way. It should be somewhere around here. And look at that. That's where it is. Even though we've been pumping around it and we have the strength to go above it because this green is going, and we did need a consolidation. Now, if you're looking for like, 1 or 3 bar plays, 4 bar plays, that's not my thing. I don't really do day trades very often. It's more like when the information and the technicals line up, that's when I come in for a trade. So like I'm usually a long-term investor / swing trader, so I can hold things for a while, or I'll be a day trader on days like this and do what I just did. So I got in down here. I bought some calls. I was sweating hard right here. It just slammed right through. I felt it going up. I was like, all right, here we go. But it ran into some problems like right around here. It didn't look like it because it was very bullish at the time, and the volume was actually slightly increasing. It looked like from that candle, right? That was good? Yeah. So that it was coming up. You're thinking like, all right, here we go. But something just didn't feel right. So when this red candle was pounding around here, I was like, all right, this is the support before we dropped. I'm getting out of there. So I dumped it. And now we're down here, we're bouncing again. We're probably going to test around the area that I let that thing go. But my thing is, I made like, I don't know, 15-20% on that move, and I could have made more, whatever. But I covered the losses from the plays I tried to make this morning, and that's why I made those things small, so that way I could cover them if I needed to. And I got a nice little profit out of it. It's been a while since I've traded the Fed effectively, because last time I didn't trade it. The time before that, I got annihilated by it. So I've been, or no, maybe there's been a couple, but at one point I got annihilated on a Fed trade, and I'd been like 100% going into that at the end of the year, that November bullshit, man. I was going for the wrong direction, and I didn't see what I was doing. So my thing is, like, if you get your money, you can get out, you're good. And Ashton Phoenix, interesting movement. Yes, definitely. This is what happens. It gets really volatile. These candles are huge because at this time there are a lot of traders trading. If you look down here on the bottom, this is the volume. This is showing you how many shares are traded. This first candle where everything dropped showed you the range. It showed you where like most traders were thinking about this. And I'm looking at the calls that I let go, and they're not up to where I sold them, but they're coming back. And I kind of expected this. I was thinking that with the bullish action we've had and Powell coming out and saying what he said, we're probably going to have strength to the upside for a while. We still have problems, though. It's not going to be like an instant just, oh, we're at old highs. It's like, it's going to be volatile. We're going to come down a little bit. We're going to have these huge drops. We're going to go up in ways you don't believe. You're going to think it's not happening. And then 3 days later, when the move's already happening, you're going to start getting into it. That's the kind of environment we're getting into. We're getting into the confusing part. So it's good to be in as a bull with my long account. I'm mostly in cash. This was the reason I was saving the cash, was so that I could make the moves today. And it's still looking good. I mean, I'm still considering jumping back into something, but at the same time, I don't know about this. I don't like this behavior. I want to see the response. We only have a little over half an hour for the market until it's closed. So I want to see what it does in that time. I mean, with a half an hour left, a lot could happen, especially with the speech being done and everybody getting their commentary now. So normally I'm not day trading. That's why this is different. And that's why this is good too, because like I like to come through when the evidence lines up, and Fed meetings where things are where there's support and there's bullish sentiment, but there's still a lot of uncertainty, and there are a lot of shorts, more importantly, because we need the fuel to keep going. That's when I like to look into these pumps, because you get these rarely. And I don't like going for the everyday plays, which people just want to get in and they want to trade all the time. It's like, it's not going to work, dude. Especially even if you know what you're doing, it's still not going to work. It's better to ease into a trade that you see coming in the long term, and not having to guess every 5 seconds if it's actually going to work out, because that's a painful lifestyle. You'll be right, you'll be wrong. You're mostly wrong. It's ridiculous. I mean, we've all looked at it, been like, man, I could just do that and get out of it. Nah, it sucks. It's so much easier to be like, all right, I'm just going to do this long term. I'm going to do this a smaller amount of money, and I'm going to still do what the market thinks you should do, is like invest to the upside. Inflation is just going to move assets in an upward direction over time, no matter what happens. And if you just hold cash, you're not going to follow that. Unless you're investing your cash, which is what I like to do. I like to have a chunk of cash sitting in an account that's making interest. And this whole time that all these rates have been coming up, that account has been paying more and more and more. So it's like, yeah, cash, you're not growing the way you would with stocks, but when they flip rates around because they fuck everything up with stocks, then you're going to start making money with that. And it's nice to have that as a position, like have some cash, and if you need it, there's cash right there. So it's like, it's not just cash sitting in your checking account that's probably even costing you a little bit, or in a savings account that's not accruing something. It's in an investment account that pays you interest, more interest than the banks, just to have your cash with them. And there are reputable institutions that do that. Most institutions will do that. You know, so it's a nice place to be if that happens. So I like to have a little bit of my cash in that. And then obviously cash for making plays in a separate account. I have 2 trading accounts. I've got my long account, and then I've got my cash account, and then there's the crypto. So that's basically my whole setup right now. So I've got my long positions, which is a diversified thing, and includes like not just my picks, but also a well-rounded portfolio picked by someone else too. So it's nice to have everything spread out in an upward direction, so that you're at least beating inflation. And that's what you can do with just basic stocks, the ones you know that are going to go up. That's why I invest in valuable companies. I look at the S&P 500. I look at the Dow. I look for some of those that are going to be at the top of the list for what they do. And then all the competitors, because if there are competitors that are smaller but better, go for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but just trying to find something that you know is going to be around a long time, and also having someone else pick that hedges you. So if you're investing in a fund of some kind, which is what I'm doing, then somebody else is managing that. And you're basically saying like, all right, you do what the market thinks you should do. And all the professionals and everybody with money and legal authority want you to do. And then I'll sit here and be like, all right, I think that looks cool. So I want to pick that one. It looks funny. It's got a nice color on their thing. It's popping up. Everyone's talking about this thing, and that works sometimes. So, like depending on where you are in the demographic. Like if I was a kid, man, I wish I knew stocks when I was a kid, because you could see trends so much earlier when you're a kid. Like little stupid things, like those fidget spinners that went crazy however many years ago. Kids like knew that shit way before anybody else. So it's like, what can you benefit from that in the stock market? It's unbelievable how things move, and these like Tesla things happen, crypto things happen. All you needed was a little bit of crypto, man. Back in like 2010, 11, just buy like a little bit of crypto and you're set. So this is basically what I've been thinking for the day. So sorry about that eye on Blaze. They basically said they're done fighting inflation because the CPI was going lower as expected. However, that's not entirely true. So are you talking about the fact that they're measuring the CPI in kind of like favorable ways, or are you saying like you're talking about all the other stuff that underlies it? It goes with it, because you're right about that. Like the CPI, people say it's like, oh, it's the PCE that they're looking at, which they are, because the PCE is a little bit better than the CPI, but they're looking at both of those because they know traders are looking at the CPI. Most people don't know what PCE is. Most people never even heard of it. They're just like, oh, the CPI. So that's the one that you really have to look at. And they're going to fudge that one more because that's the one that needs to look good no matter what they do. But the other thing is, stuff is really coming down in certain areas. It's just being more stubborn in others. Anyway, this was an interesting Fed meeting. And look at where we're sitting right now. We're sitting straight in the middle on VWAP. I'm so glad I got out right there, even if we still pump, because this is showing some strength, but right now it's weak because we should be moving to the upside. If we were going to have a crazy move, this this candle right here kind of wrecks it a little bit, but this red one showing you that there's indecision at this point for at least 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes. That's a while. We've been sitting here, like, even though it's been up and down, that this price range is going on an hour at this point. And I'm glad I did what I did. Look at this. We got some green candles. So we still this could be support in this long-term timeline, but the volume is dropping. And at a certain point, lower volume helps it move more because there are fewer players in the way of you getting to the goal. But at the same time, stupid movements can happen, so things can correct quickly if the big players come back in during or after that session, which is why I say, what does the market do for the rest of the day? We've got a half an hour left. I'm going to have to dip out of here at some point pretty soon, but at this point, I'm just trying to see what the market's actually doing. So what you got up here? CPI does measure inflation, but more importantly, it's a comparison between now and the inflation at the same time last year. Yes, July 22nd's inflation will make next month's CPI look bad. Inflation hasn't been stopped by 5.25%. We'll have to see. I don't know. That's hard to tell because if you're thinking about July 22nd, that's still over a month away, which is a lot of time for data to come in and for opinions to change and for the ways that they measure this to be fudged even more. Like who knows how they do it sometimes. But yeah, I like how you're saying it's a comparison to last year. So that's not saying that it's different. It's just saying last year we went up a bunch, and since then we've gone up this much more. And that's insane if you think about how much that actually is. And if that's what you're getting at, I 100% understand. You mean July 2022? Oh, right. So the inflation will make next month's CPI look bad. Inflation hasn't been stopped by 5.25%. We'll see what it says, because are you talking about core or are you talking about headline? Because one thing they're going to do is, like, my guess is, because this is what's been happening, core is going to go down a little bit or maybe not much at all, but headline is going to somehow dramatically drop, because that seems like what happens every time. The crazy stuff's been coming down more and more, but the core stuff is being more stubborn, which, I mean, that makes sense because that's what the core stuff is, what's running our economy. It's everything we need, all like the products we're using and the services, it's all going through that. So in order for that to function, we need that to be healthy. And that's what we're finding out. Is it healthy? Are we able to maintain that? And right now, we're still hanging around VWAP. So as much as I think, even though it's green and we've got some upward pressure, I'm still glad I got out and I took my 15 to 20% because that was a nice move. I was just waiting for something like that. These are the things I think happened. After that, I don't know, because I've seen them drop, I've seen them pop, I've seen them go sideways. And it's just, you see the biggest moves and then nothing happens for the rest of the day. And it's terrible. My philosophy is, if you get your money, get out. Don't be trying to keep dipping that chip in there. Like, get out of there quickly, because it will burn you, especially if you're using options or you're using any leveraged product. If you got your money, get out. And that's the thing. You got to use all that stuff responsibly. Like I use leverage products, but I don't have leverage myself because I don't want the constraints of margin and the fees and the worry that like, oh crap, everything went down. So now I got to sell half the shares of this thing I've been working on for years. No, I don't want to do that. I'd rather just use the money that I have and not make as much. That's kind of the deal that I'm going. So you can explain it simpler. Say chocolate bar goes for $1 to $2 in a month. That's 100% inflation. Next month, it only goes up 50 cents. That's 50 cent. That's 50 cent rise. It looks statistically like inflation is going down, but it's not really much. Yes, 100%. That's what I was saying too. Like we're comparing it to a year where we've already pumped. It's like we are, 5, 6, 7% above where we were last year, which was, I don't know what, 7, 8, 9%. Because there was at one point in the year, it got up to like 9%. It was insane. And that's including the year before that. So you want to really boggle the mind, like go down the chain of how many increases that is above the previous thing. It's like, what, how is that even possible? How's our economy function with that much craziness in it? But yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. So this was an interesting day. I got a nice little trade out of it. It's consolidating at this point. I don't like it for a breakout or breakdown at this point, but the fact that it's sitting there is just telling me there is some strength. People are bullish. I think in the long run, it's probably going to go up more. We need a correction it's likely that there would be a correction because of how much we've gone up. The question is when. And events like this show us how much pressure is in the system to be released. And there's a good amount of pressure, but if you think about this isn't a massive, massive move. If I'm looking at the trend in the longer term timeline, so let me switch this to a day, it's not going to look as extreme. That's the trend we want to look at. 1 year, 1 day. All right. So I drew these lines right here. I'm not much into technical analysis, but this is my thing. These are the highest volume areas in the range that we were trading. So if it hits one of these areas, it's very likely to consolidate because a lot of traders are in and they have their risk at that point. So there's a lot of risk here, a lot of risk here, a lot of risk here. I'm taking that into consideration when moves happen because they tend to, when they get out of the pull of the gravity right here, they go to the next heavy object and orbit it for a while. That's kind of why we had these drops like really extreme at the end of the year because we're adjusting for the new tax season and everything else. You're talking about capital gains. I'm not joking. The world is built on that, right? They're adjusting from here to here. You see this big, massive drop at the end of the year. Oh, that was so profitable. I was loving that one. I got the drop, I got the pop, and then I kind of sat for a while because it was blank for a bit. But what did the market do? It popped in between these areas. It went up here, it hung out for a bit, came back down, hung out for a bit, and it doesn't have to sit there perfectly. These lines are just in the middle of the volume area. Like I turned the volume profile on so you can see at what price how many people were buying things, and these areas had the absolute most, which means they had the absolute most risk. And when we pumped, if I zoom in on here, we're coming right up to this level. We're not there yet, but we're entering a level of heavy resistance, of heavy risk, where people are ready to get out because they've been down for so long. But there's so much bullish sentiment that if you look at this trend, looks like we could keep going. So we'll have to see what happens, and it all depends upon the news. If something crazy happens, then of course we're going to drop. If something positive happens, then of course we're going to pop. But the sentiment has been bullish, and it's been bullish ever since the end of last year. And I've actually been bullish since a little bit before that. Even though I know we've had this volatility, I've been paying attention to these points. Every time it gets there, I look for an inflection. I look for the possibility of a bounce. When we got here last time, we sat for a long time before we finally broke out. This pressure, this is a little bit unnatural, and it shows you that there was a discrepancy between the people that thought this was the level and people knew it was eventually going to go higher. They just knew it was going to happen quicker. So the people that are hedged to the downside are trying to get out, but some of them are repositioning to get it even higher because they know there's going to be a correction at some point, which I agree with. Yes, there's going to be a correction. It's just hard to time that. It's better to swing that. So that's why I took that thing today. I got the nice day trade out of it, the thing I like to do, and then get out and look for the trends long term. So the rest of this week is going to dictate how I trade the next few months. Even though there are Fed meetings coming up, this was an important one. This had a new summary of economic projections. It was showing you that they all believe that inflation is coming down at the rate we all expect it to be. At least the people that are honestly looking at it, not the people that are looking at it for their own interests or whatever. I want to see what the market does before I trade it because I'm not looking long term. I'm not trying to get into narratives. That's one thing that's really difficult with trading. Getting into narratives is so easy to do. You find these things, they sound good, like you get into them and then it doesn't work. So you go to the anti them and then it doesn't work. And eventually you find something that's cool, but it keeps you in this like state of that is the only thing that matters, or that's the only thing, everything's trading based on that. It's like, no, that thing is trading based on everything else. So it's better to pay attention to everything else so that you can trade that thing. And that's what the market was telling me today. It's not certain about this. We're still hanging out. I've changed the page, but if we look at it on the day, we're still doing what we were doing before. We are flat. Look at that. We came into the day with this nice pump. We've been pumping for the past few days, and then we're sitting where we were, even though we've had all this volatility. This is a pretty big section of movement, but it's small in comparison to everything else. Because if I back this up, you can see there are massive moves, like these gap ups right here. This was showing you there is so much pressure to the upside, and people that weren't buying it don't realize that this is what's going to happen for a while. We're going to pump. But now that we're hitting the area of high volume, what happens there? That's the important thing. So I'm out of the market. I want to see, not out of the market. I'm out of my trades are out, but I want to see what happens as it approaches this, if it does. Because if it breaks down and goes the other way, then we have to start thinking about different plays. But right now I've got plays to both directions. So if we have this huge drop, I'm covered. If we have a huge pump, I'm covered. If we just sit around, those plays are going to decay into nothingness, which I'm cool with because I didn't pay much. So let me see what you're saying up here. Sorry, I'm missing a lot of stuff. Let's see. The analyst I listened to is saying that rate hike now is just buying time until the implement of the central bank digital currency. Oh, I've got so much to say about that. They'll use a crisis to get people to swap from cash to CBDC. You know, that's a huge topic, and that's so important. I want to do an entire stream on that because it's how our monetary system is going to run, and people that aren't paying attention to it don't realize it's like one of the most important things that's going on right now. And it's not about conspiracies and craziness. It's about how the monetary system works. It's going to affect so many things, and there are the potential for all those conspiracies and that craziness to happen, and people don't acknowledge that. It's like, I'm not saying that stuff's going to happen or it does, or there's this big thing. I'm saying that kind of stuff can and will happen in different ways, maybe ways we don't expect. So it's good to be suspicious of it and making sure you're looking out for it. So I want to talk about that further so much, but right now I got to wrap this up and actually get out of here pretty soon because we're getting close to 1. So that was the Fed meeting. We're sitting in the middle right here. Let me switch to the 5. See, the 5's a little crazy. Most people are using the 5 in some capacity, but look at that. If you're on the 5, this would have been such a difficult trade because every red candle looks so good. But if you're on a little bit longer timeline, let's go to 10. 10 was the one that looked the best to me. That had more confirmation of moves than anything else. We had this nice red candle, and then boom, we sat there for a while. It's like this is 20-ish minutes. So if we're sitting in an area for 20-ish minutes after one of the craziest things of the year just happened, because this is when rates came out. This is when they said unchanged, boom, dead. Everything went down. So I dumped so quick. I was like, dude, I've got these call spreads. I usually don't even use spreads, but I was so nervous about it. I put on spreads. This was like the perfect way to trade and be wrong. So I was like, this is why I trade like this. So if you're wrong, it's not that bad. But if you're right, it's pretty good. It's hard to do. And it's really hard to actually get it at the right place, but it's doable. So I got out of those things quickly. And once it's consolidated down here, I got some calls. I thought about getting puts, but I didn't even touch them. And then we got into here. I was sweating hard, and I let him go somewhere in this red candle as we were coming back down. So that was a nice trade. Exactly what I'm looking for. You get a nice move. You're talking about 3-bar plays earlier, actually. You want to see some BS? You ever see a $68 crude oil going into the summer of OPEC? 1 million barrels a day. Yeah, they're gonna. So. That's such a complicated situation right now with energy. Like, our energy prices are going to go up because of that whole thing. Saudi Arabia is like, dude, we're not making as much money. I want to make more money. And Russia's like, shit, I need to make more money. And the U.S. is like, no, fuck no. We got prices low. We don't want you to make money. So we're in this economic war for like people that want to keep prices low and people that want to pump prices high. And the people that want to pump prices high have the oil. So it's like they're going to be the ones that probably went out in the short term. But the U.S. has a way of getting around this shit and changing it over time. It's like the U.S. It's not just the U.S. It's this like big global machine, and it's whatever you want to call it, that works together in order to like make this shit happen. I don't know what it is, but it's let's just call it the entity that moves the market. So the entity that moves the market it just kind of does it like that. So yeah, the crude is insane. I wish I bought barrels of it back when it dipped below zero a few years ago. Like, what? They paid you to take oil. If you have oil in the millions of barrels, you basically made money to have them. And then the contracts closed, and what happened at the next contract cycle? Boom, it all came back and oil was worth money again. That's what people don't understand about trading. It's like, yes, crazy shit like that can happen, but it's the derivatives. It's not the real thing. And when the contracts of those derivatives expire, money goes back to where it's supposed to go. So you got to either be on the right side or the wrong side of that. Either way, the money settles itself at the end of that contract. It's not open-ended like stocks and everything else. Things that you hold long-term are open-ended, but those are definite. So if there's a crazy movement like that in oil and it's a valuable resource that we actually need, guess what? It's going to come back. It's not going to be at zero forever. So those idiots that held the contracts but couldn't do the oil or couldn't hold the oil were the ones that moved. That was it. So it's like a couple of dumb hedge funds just didn't have the room for it. They're like, hey, let's just buy these contracts, and they just sat on them forever instead of getting rid of them at the time when the risk was better. They could have been like, all right, we're either down a little bit or we're not down that much right now. Let's just get out of these things, and they would have been fine. But no, they just held them because they thought, oh, diamond hands. It was probably one of these diamond hands people. I don't know. Like, diamond hands is good for your long investments for sure, but like you got to be careful when you're messing around with commodities or anything volatile like that. That's why CPI separates commodities from actual shit. It's like, oh, it's crazy. But anyway, so what do we say it up here? OPEC needs $60 a barrel to be solvent. We're dumping SPR economically to fight Russia, but could bite us with a supply shortage. Yeah, absolutely. Because what do we have to do? We have decent shale production in the United States, and we have some kind of reserve, but we've been dumping so much. Like I don't know how empty the reserves are at this point because I don't pay that much attention to oil, but I know we've been dumping oil into the economy for over a year now, and that's what's been helping prices stay low here. There's still the rest of the world that's doing everything else. And you're right, OPEC need their base price, and it can't really go below it. And these are the price wars. This is what happens. Oil was so expensive not that long ago. People were like, what are we going to do? And now it's going the other way, and they're going, well, what are we going to do? It's starting to get too little. So it's got to find a midpoint where it survives. And I think that midpoint continues to grow because inflation grows, because oil grows, because everything grows. Just kind of the way it goes. But right now we're sitting at this line. And we've been there the whole time. I'm so glad I took it when I did. Even if it pops off, if you get your money, get out if you're doing derivatives. My longs, if it goes up, my longs will take care of that. No big deal. Those move. Oh, this was so stressful. I got to tell you, before it even started, getting in, just finding a position for me was a nightmare. I started a position yesterday, which I wish I hadn't done, but at the same time, it's fine because I actually got out of it well. But I was trying to get in early just in case some craziness happened. Like if they said, hey, we're gonna like lower rates, which they definitely wouldn't. I wanted to at least have something in there. Or we're pausing, we're skipping, we're raising. I was ready for them to raise, dude. Everybody was talking about how they were going to pause, and I thought, dude, if they raise right now, this is going to be insane. So I was getting ready just in case they did, but I was also getting ready for them to try to pump the markets a little and assure people, because they have to switch between like tamping the markets down and keeping people a little bit more afraid, and then boosting them and encouraging them to spend and do things. There's a fine. That's what the Fed does with these meetings. It's like, why are they in there asking these questions and all this stuff? Number one, transparency. Number two, to just kind of like project what they want people to feel and think. Like they're basically telling us in boring words that we can understand if we really think about them, but it just takes energy, and we don't want to do it because our energy's all gone to other stuff and we're stressed. But like, he's saying something. And I've lost my train of thought. So Powell says one word and numbers and crash, hilarious. Yes, Powell, that's the thing, dude. Powell's the thing that moves the markets. You look at all the data because it comes out beforehand. You know what all the data is. All the algos are analyzing it. What Powell is doing is bringing a person into our like lizard brain and talking to that and not the logical side of it. It's like it is talking to the logical side of it, so that's why it's boring and dry and has to do that. But the whole point of it is talk to our lizard brain and be like, dude, we're cool. Or to be like, no, you should be afraid. That's the whole point. These things are not, it's so different than you think with how the market works. So that's what everybody's doing. They're manipulating the markets because that's how we actually live our lives. It's not something like they're trying, well, I mean, they are trying to gain, but the whole point is the manipulation is only so much because when you have an entity that this size, you can't control everything. So you can kind of influence and hope the momentum of that influence moves the thing eventually. And if you're smart and you do it long enough, you can figure out how to do that effectively. And I think that's what people in charge have done. They've figured out how to like move the superorganism. But the superorganism is not them. It's not controlled by them. If the superorganism shifts, everything's going to shift. And I think they know that. So they know that their control only goes so far. And any human should know that. No matter how big you are, no matter how cool you are, no matter how whatever you are, there's a limit to it because the environment is allowing you to do that, which is why we have to take care of our environment in different ways, physically and mentally. So right now the market is dropping. We're coming back down to lows. This is showing me that there's not strength. I have puts So if this thing crashes, those puts are going to be nice. Right now they're up a little bit, I'm sure, but not that much. It's really these were long shot puts, so they're moving so slow. It's basically like I'm not making anything unless there's a giant movement. So my hopes are up that we could do something now, because I got out of most of my upward movements. I still have some. I have those long shot ones that even if they go out, I'm still up. So basically, if I could lose everything I put in right now and I'm still up, really nice with this move right here. And that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to make enough to cover all the things that I was doing to protect myself if the move didn't happen. Because if the move didn't happen, depending upon what you do, you can either profit from that or you can like break even / lose a little bit. So that's what I was going for with that stuff. And it worked well enough that I was willing to take this gamble today with a little bit of the money, make it all back, make a little bit more, and then be happy with whatever happens afterwards. Because I have a strangle. I have a very long shot strangle, which I do most of the time going into these events, because it doesn't usually hit, but once in a while, this thing will move the entire market in a direction so quickly. You'll be like, oh man, I wish I had just bought 2 of those. It's just that kind of stuff goes through your head. And I thought, well, it's insurance. It's like a lottery ticket. You know, people go in and they buy tons and tons of lottery tickets. So they put like $20 in, $50 in to try to do it. It's like, no. That's not how you play the lottery. You play the lottery as if you're going to lose. You're just trying to sustain. So how often can you put in the lowest amount of money possible? And the lowest amount of money possible with those is $1. So once in a while, if you want the fancy one, you can pay the $2 or blah, blah, blah. But think about that. If you're paying the $2 every time consistently over time, you're doubling your losses. So if you just want to lose $1 every so often so that you feel happy or you feel secure that you have a ticket to that happiness, even though you know it's not going to show up, that's like a psychological thing you can do. That's how you play the lottery. You go like $1 once in a while. Hey, I might be in it. And then you forget about the ticket for 6 months. That's how you do it, you know, or like, and think about how much can you lose in a year if you want to play that. It's the same way you play these kind of plays. I don't like trying to guess where it's going to go. I don't like trying to get these massive movements unless I have reason to. And the reason I had was this pattern right here. This consolidation from the day's trading, strength going into it, huge drop on an announcement that we expected. Although there wasn't full clarity on it though. I was a little confused during that. But then we had the bounce because the things we were afraid of didn't happen, and things were still somewhat the status quo, and they're doing what they said. So the market said, all right, this is good enough to protect myself. And the shorts were like, oh shit, I'm up, I got to get out. And suddenly you start a squeeze and everybody wants to get in and the whole thing goes crazy. But where do you go at the end of the day? You go towards the bottom, and we're at 12:54. So maybe I'll make it to close and we'll see what happens. But that's the absolute latest I got to go because my schedule's on right now. But I love these Fed meetings because they tell you a lot. It's a very important day. It was a profitable day. I say I don't really day trade, but these things, I take advantage of them when I do. So I appreciate everyone hanging out with me. I'm going to just chill for a minute. I'm going to see what happens with the market. If there's anything else anybody wants to talk about, throw it in the chat. I'll do that. I've got my setup now so I can actually see what happened. What do we got there? Hey, thanks for the follow. I appreciate that. Dean Regulator. Yes, we had a nice day. It was profitable. It was well timed. It was interesting because I had more than just I had losses. I had gains. I'll have to talk about this whole thing on the next stream that I have. So Friday maybe is probably going to be the next game stream. I may have to run a rerun on that one, but I'm doing regular Fridays, and then when these Fed meetings come up, I'll do broadcasts like this. Just trying to catch the times where there's actual volatility and also work into my own schedule, because this is a side hustle for me. I'm basically just showing everybody what I do and how I do it. I'm getting my thoughts about the whole thing. And then recently I've started playing games, so I'm throwing that in there too, so that maybe people who wouldn't normally see my content might be like, oh, this is interesting because it's a little different or whatever. But that's what I've been looking to do so far. Just trying to talk about the stuff. I'm also looking for people that are interested in talking about this stuff. So I have a Discord. If you're still there, Ion Blaze, I have a Discord down there where I talk about this stuff. It's a very small group, only a few people talking right now. You come on in and if you have stuff to say, if you have graphs, you have charts, whatever. Let's talk about it. I'm trying to create a community of people that are actually interested in trading in all forms. You could be a day trader, you could be a swing trader, you could be a long-term investor, you could be a short, you could be a combination of everything. I want opinions from everybody. You could be someone that doesn't trade but is interested in what's going on. I like that whole thing. I want to create a community of that kind of people, because I think if we put our minds together, we can figure out strategies that work. Because I have strategies that work pretty well. They're consistent. However, they're not as consistent as as I would like them to be. And there are problems here and there. It depends upon how the market goes. And there are people that are able to trade different market conditions. And I think having a group of people where somebody knows, hey, this is kind of my thing right now, and the other people feel off, we can be like, let's listen to this person because they know what's going on right now. Having like the diversity of opinion and everything too, because shorts are going to have a way different opinion of what's going on right here than the longs, and everybody else that's looking at it isn't even going to know. But if you look at where we are, we're still descending on the day. That's interesting. So I was looking at this. Let me back up a little bit before I dip out. So I was looking at this. We had the pump. This was the peak, but we've actually been on a steady line. If you were to ignore these crazy volatile movements, this is a very clean downward slope. So I think that's being looked at by the traders and the algos and everything. So we're coming up to these areas where we keep hitting resistance, and it's lower and lower. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see that that VWAP is descending with it, and they're kind of going. So that shows that there's not crazy movement to any direction right now. Whatever happens for the rest of the week will dictate how I position my swing trades. So I'm looking for trades that take weeks and months. I'm not looking for trades that take hours. Days would be nice too. If I see them, I'll get those, but I'm mostly looking for something like towards the bottom that I can ease into slowly. You can buy a couple contracts, or you can buy a couple shares, wait a little bit. If it goes down, ease into it a little bit if you're confident. I'm looking for something like that, but those are hard to find. So it's good to have a base of people that all have experience and can talk about it. So I appreciate you being here. We've got everything down in the about section. If you want to come hang out in the Discord, please do. Also, I'm going to be editing some videos, popping them on YouTube and all that. And if you follow me, I'll follow you. I'm trying to support everybody else. Just come in and hang out. So thanks for hanging out with me. I'm going to dip out of here. Looks like the market is 2 minutes from closing, so I guess I didn't quite make it, but we'll see what happens and regroup from there. Thanks for hanging out.